What's up, everybody? That's the best that I could do to honor Freddy Mercury, aka Zanzibar, from Cool Mini Nuts Zombicide Green Horde. Zanzibar is definitely a model that is a bit overwhelming at first look. There's a ton of colors, there's a ton of detail that is going on there. Everything needs to be tight and crisp. But I think I figured out a way to make it a little bit easier and still make him look absolutely incredible. So if you'll join me down at the table, I'll show you how I got Freddy, aka Zanzibar, done. Alright, so we're starting out with Zenithal Prime as usual. Started with black and then blasted him with a white primer from the top down and at a 45-degree angle. I actually think that it's pretty important for this model, so you shouldn't skip that. For his hands and his face, I am going to be using Vallejo's Flat Flesh. Any sort of light Caucasian skin tone would work. You're actually going to whiten this a lot, so it depends on how much you want him to look like a clown, really. If you start with a lighter tone, it won't look out of place when you do the highlights. If you start with a darker tone, then it'll make it look like he's wearing makeup. So we are going to darken it down a bit though with Reikland Fleshshade, especially because there are so many spots where skin is meeting cloth, and that will need some darkening in that area. I also immediately use my brush to make sure that it doesn't pool in any areas, because like I said, we don't want it to be too dark. Vallejo model color is black for his hair. Now I'm not doing his facial hair yet. We wanted to finish his face first before you do the facial hair. It'll make it really, really hard to do if you do that first. Vallejo game color is wolf gray, and I'm doing this on this staff. And I feel like this might actually be non-essential to do the wolf gray. You could just start with a darker color and work up to this color, because the staff is sort of like a white, but it also looks like it might be metal, and so I just went with painting the wolf gray. The part that you can't skip is right here. You're going to want the wolf gray as the base coat for all of your white. And so all of the top portion, his legs, the leg portion of his like jumpsuit does not have any white in it, but the top portion is white and red. So I'm doing a solid coat of wolf gray all over the top half of his jumpsuit. Whole red, I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the wolf gray, and that is to coat the bottom half and those tails, I guess. I don't know what really to call them, but those things sticking out from his waist. So I'm painting all of these in whole red. It's a brown red, and it makes a really great base color for red. Now the reason we're starting with these two colors is because the color that we are going to pick every other diamond for on his jumpsuit is going to be darker than these. So the blue will go over the red and red will go over white. If you tried to do it in the opposite, you'll have to struggle to get good coverage. But by starting with these colors, it's much easier to then just cover it later. So what I did that I think saved me a lot of time was to then just dry brush the entire jumpsuit. So of course I'm focusing on the top half right now, and then I'll focus on the bottom half later. But right now I'm using Ivory on the top half, and I'm not trying to pick out anything for the white. I'm just treating the entire jumpsuit as if, the entire top of his jumpsuit, if that would be white. So I'm making sure just to get good even coverage of the dry brush over everything. and trying to make it look like there is no more wolf gray. I want it to look like it's ivory with a nice shadow in every single one of those diamonds. Next up, I'm doing a dry brush of pure white. This is going to be slightly lighter, and it's going only from the top down. And I'm trying to ensure that I see the white on every single one of the diamonds before I move on. But you don't want it to be too heavy. Ivory is going to be the main color. This is definitely the highlight to make it shine. But I really think that this saves a lot of time later. You can use the red when you cover up this to really clean it up and to make it look really nice. So we're going to do the exact same thing that we did on the top, but now for the bottom we're using Scarlet Red. Scarlet Red is a very deep red color. It doesn't have the brown in it, but it goes into the red hue really nicely. So any sort of deep red color is perfect here. It's probably good to pay a little bit extra attention to the top of his thighs and then the top of the back of his calves. Those are the parts that are getting the most amount of light hitting them, so you want those to pop the most. Here I'm using flat red from Vallejo model color, and that'll be my final highlight for these. Now I'll come back later with a brush and actually paint to ensure that everything gets good even coverage, but this is a way to quickly get what you want out of it and not spend so much time trying to paint every single diamond. So as you'll see here, I am now coming back to the top and actually using the whole red to paint in every other diamond that's on his chest. At this time I'm also using the whole red to clean up any spots around his collar. I'll also do his shoulder pads because those are going to be red. This model has a lot more red than it does of the blue or white. And then also clean up the areas around his waist, anything like that that needs to be cleaned up. I'm just sort of using this as a way to tidy up before I get finished with the model. Same thing as before, Scarlet Red goes next. And so the Scarlet Red, you're going to see on the right hand side of the model, well, I guess the model's left hand side, right hand side as you're looking at it, is already done. That's because I wanted to test to make sure that this was going to come out the way that I wanted it to. So that's a few steps ahead, but so there you can see, and trust me that this is the way that it works. Using Scarlet Red to cover the top of each of those tails, also covering the shoulder pads, and the same way that we did before, picking out every other diamond on his chest. I also line those little flaps. He has one on his left hip and his right hip. So at this point he looks like he has way too much red, and that's okay. It's because we haven't done the blue yet. Once we do the blue, you'll see that it comes in to be very, very well balanced. Same thing as before, flat red, and this one we're going to do pretty much the top 50%. Now you could push this higher if you wanted to. You could add white to it. Be careful about it going into the pink range. Or you can add a little bit of orange or a little bit of yellow and boost it even higher. But I think if you start with whole red, the flat red actually is a pretty nice highlight that does make it pop really, really well. And especially with the dark blue that's going to be next to it, you'll see that this stands out really, really well. There's a lot of little areas that I didn't show myself painting, but they're pretty easy to figure out, especially if you look at the game art. But otherwise, I mean, as long as you make the left-hand side look like the right-hand side, you really can't go wrong, so don't worry too much. Here's P3's Coal Black. I don't think I've used this color before. I've owned it for a while, but I didn't really know where to use a really dark bluish black. It's a very strange color. It's almost like a dark aqua and not a true blue. But this works very well as the background color for all of the blue. So I'm going to be painting the diamonds, and I just randomly picked one, started with that, and then did every other one. So there is no rhyme or reason to it. I just did one on each leg there, and that was to show you how I did it, and then from there I went on. Next up was Prussian Blue. Prussian Blue is kind of the main color that you're getting, so the Coal Black is deep in the recesses. The Prussian Blue is going to cover most of it and bring it into that bright blue spectrum. And you want to focus this, funny enough, a lot on the back of the model, because the front of the model is kind of leaning over this, I don't know what to call it, like a sash that's hanging down, like a loincloth almost, that's hanging down in front of him. He's leaning over it, so you're not going to want to spend as much time highlighting the whole entire thing as you do on the back. But you do want to pick out spots on it for sure. As you can see, I picked out along the top and then along the sides. Here's Azure. Azure is a bluish gray, and this next to that flat red, you can already see how much it's popping. I love these two colors together. I think that if you really want this model to look like the character artwork, I mean, number one, do a better job on the face than I did, but aside from that, I think that these colors are the exact matches. There is a little bit of purple in his sash, but I didn't really want to spend that much time trying to blend that color for a little tiny bit. So I stuck with the Azure, it made it pop, and I think it looks excellent. Here I'm using Khaki for his waist belt. I wanted something completely out of the range of what we were using. I didn't want to use a dark brown. I wanted to use a real light brown. And then I'm using some ivory mixed in with that khaki to do all the highlights. So it's not pure ivory, it's ivory and khaki, about a 50-50 mix. And just going around and hitting all of the highlight points on the belt and the little ring that's on his left hip. I think that breaks up the top from the bottom really well. It also gives something else for your eyes to focus on while you're looking around. Wolf Gray I'm using sort of a non-metallic metal. I didn't want to do a metallic metal on him at all. I end up using it for his chains on his chest because they're gold and the rings on his fingers. But I didn't want to do it a silver one right in the middle. So I just used Wolf Gray and then highlighted with some ivory. And that pretty much does the job of making it look like shiny silver or steel. And the same thing on all of the little latches for his pockets. Now this is where I was saying you didn't really need to do the Wolf Gray earlier, because I'm now using Mechanicus Standard Gray and going over the Wolf Gray. But this just depends on how varied you want the metal to look. You could just paint it as a white staff. If that was the case, then Wolf Gray is fine. I painted it as kind of, it was reflective metal. So now I'm going back over the Mechanicus Standard Gray, putting in Wolf Gray again. See, this wasn't the smartest idea. This is probably not the best way to do it. But if you want it to look metal, start with Mechanicus Standard Gray. If you want it to look like it's painted white, then you can start with Wolf Gray. Now I'm using Ivory to come and pick out even more areas. So I'm not doing a non-metallic metal or a true metallic metal on the staff. I'm just sort of giving that image of it, especially because it's behind him and you barely see any of it there. Just running some ivory along the edge and then putting some hash marks in it kind of does the job. I'm using Nuln oil around the wrap at the top just to put some definition in the wrap there, because it's kind of hard to see. I'm using Squid Pink from Vallejo's Game Color, and we're going to do 50% of this ball in the Squid Pink. So right up to about the halfway point of the ball, we'll do the Squid Pink. And then we're going to come back for the top half, and we're going to wet blend this. So make sure it's on thick enough that you can wet blend it. Obviously you don't want it too thick, because then it's going to get all clumpy and hide some of the intricate design on the ball. But now I've got some white here, and I'm putting white along the top. And then I clean off my brush, put a little bit of water, and then wet blend the two together so that the pink fades into white. Now you might have to go up or down depending on which one comes out a little bit stronger. For me, I sort of did both just to make sure that right in the middle I had a very light version of pink. In the base I had a deep pink, and at the very top I had white. So you can do that as well. Now pale yellow, I watered this down a ton. And the ball is supposed to be like a glowing yellow. At least that's what the artwork shows. So I watered it down a ton just to give the impression of some yellow glow. And it's just on the top pieces of the metal there, and then a little bit on that second like wrist guard of or hand guard of metal, and then a little bit on his shirt, and that's all. So very light. It looks a little darker now because it's very wet, but as it dries you'll see it lightens up. Now we're going to finish up this wrap with some wolf gray, painted in like hash marks, making sure just to hit the wrap and not any of the Nuln oil that we put in there. And I'm coming back with that pure flat flesh, what we started with, and that is to start highlighting up. So we're going to do everything normal of what you already know how to do. We're going to be highlighting all of the skin, focusing on the center, the nose, the center of his forehead, his nose, his cheeks, and his chin. Doing his eyebrows there. Just any of the pointy parts of a face, that's what you're trying to highlight up. Also grabbing his ears. So now I'm using black, and I do his eyes, which he has like strong eyeliner, so it's good to do dark black here. And then I also use that black to do his mustache. And then I come back with ivory and do his eyeballs. But if you've been watching me for a while, you know that I hate doing eyes, so I just don't do them on camera. But all I use is some ivory, and I tap it right into the center of his eyes. But I start mixing fairy flesh in with flat flesh and do a couple layers of that until I get the correct skin tone that I'm looking for, which is pretty pale. But if you make it jump too quickly, it'll look like white makeup, so be careful. Do it slowly. So here's the black for the mustache. Just like a pencil mustache going across his lips. And then the final thing is some gold. You'll also notice that on his forehead, I did the red triangle on his forehead as well at this point. So after his face was done, I dipped back into the red and put that on there. It's so small that you really don't have to layer it, but you'll want to put that red on there. And so with that, he's all done. You can see there that the yellow is toned down. I did a base of some cobblestone. You guys can base him however you want, but let me know in the comment section down below how you like him, how you would paint yours, and what from Zombicide do you want to see next. Also, do not forget to like, comment, and please subscribe if you want to see any more painting videos of the Harry Potter miniatures adventure game, or Kick-Ass, or Zombicide Green Horde, which I'm painting right now. And I will see you all next time.